Sometimes, the American dream turns into a nightmare. Millions of people across the U.S., even with stable jobs, live on the brink of financial collapse. A big house, a new car, the perfect life displayed on social media. All of it can hide a reality of suffocating debt, sleepless nights, and the constant fear of losing everything. Peter, a 45-year-old systems analyst in Florida, felt sweat trickle down his spine as he stared at the notification. It was another increase in his home insurance, a crushing blow on top of a mortgage that already consumed half of his good salary. Bills piled up on his kitchen table. The new car, the furniture bought on credit, the payments for the spacious house that once represented a dream fulfilled. Now, it felt more like an anchor, dragging him down. Peter spent sleepless nights, his mind racing with the fear of losing everything. Every interest rate hike in the American real estate market, no matter how small, felt like another nail in his financial coffin. He was one of the 60% of Americans who, according to the Federal Reserve, couldn't cover an unexpected expense of $1,000 without going into debt. And the outlook for many employed individuals was even bleaker. He knew he was in trouble, but inertia, dread, and pride kept him from acting. The truth is, Peter, like so many others, was on the brink of bankruptcy, without even fully recognizing the signs. The first step to climbing out of the hole is admitting you're in it and identifying the symptoms. Constant late payments, using credit cards for basic necessities, taking out loans to cover other loans, and the feeling that money is never enough, even with a good salary, are red alerts that cannot be ignored. Often, these signs are masked by an apparent normalcy, by a salary that, at first glance, seems sufficient. However, the reality behind the smiles and appearances is that millions of Americans live on a financial tightrope, where a small unforeseen event can unbalance their entire budget. The lack of an emergency fund, for example, is one of the clearest indicators that personal finances are vulnerable. Without this safety net, any unexpected expense, whether it's a car repair, a trip to the emergency room, or a broken appliance, can trigger a crisis, leading to compulsive credit card use or high-interest loans. Peter's story reflects that of many who, even with access to credit and reasonable incomes, fall into the trap of uncontrolled consumption and the illusion that more is better. The obsession with maintaining a certain lifestyle, fueled by advertising and social pressure, often leads to unsustainable financial choices. It is at this point that the line between having a good job and being on the brink of bankruptcy becomes thin, and understanding these signs is crucial to avoiding total collapse and starting the journey to recovery. Denial is the biggest enemy of financial health. Peter's hand trembled as he typed his credit card number one more time, paying only the minimum on the statement. The feeling of being in a labyrinth with no exit was overwhelming. He wasn't alone. Financial experts in the U.S. point out that the three biggest causes of personal bankruptcy are unexpected medical expenses, job loss, and excessive debt from mortgages and credit cards. In Peter's case, the American dream trap had materialized in the form of a giant mortgage and a lifestyle he could unsustain. According to an Experian report, the average mortgage debt in the U.S. exceeds $200,000, a sum that, for many, becomes an unbearable burden. Furthermore, the cost of living in major American cities, coupled with a consumerist culture, leads many to spend more than they earn. The easy access to credit, while seemingly a blessing, often turns into a curse, pushing individuals into a vicious cycle of debt. Peter found himself caught in this cycle, buying items he didn't need with money he didn't have. With each new purchase, the illusion of well-being was fleeting, quickly replaced by anxiety over the next bills. Data from the American Bankruptcy Institute reveals that hundreds of thousands of Americans declare bankruptcy annually, many of them with jobs and salaries considered good. A lack of financial planning, the absence of an emergency fund, and social pressure to maintain a certain standard of living are catalysts that lead many to ruin. even without a sudden financial catastrophe. Peter's story echoes those of thousands of American men and women who, caught in the spiral of consumption and easy credit, discovered that the dream has turned into an unpayable debt. The escalation of healthcare costs is another crucial factor, with unexpected medical bills often draining savings and leading to massive debt. Even with insurance, copays and deductibles can be prohibitive, forcing many families to choose between health and financial stability. The rising cost of higher education, with student loans reaching tens of thousands of dollars, also contributes to the chronic debt scenario. Many young people start their adult lives already carrying a significant financial burden, which makes it difficult to build a solid financial future and acquire assets like a home. The buy now, pay later culture is deeply embedded in American society, encouraging instant gratification at the expense of long-term security. It's a dangerous cycle that can quickly escalate, turning a decent salary into insufficient income to cover monthly obligations, leaving millions in a constant state of vulnerability. The alarm clock rang, but Peter hadn't slept. Images of the house he would lose and an uncertain future replayed in his mind. He knew something had to change. That's when he came across the story of Sarah, a nurse from Arizona who had managed to pay off over $50,000 in credit card debt. Sarah's strategy was simple, but it demanded discipline. She started by tracking every cent she spent, categorizing expenses, and identifying money leaks. Peter did the same. To his surprise, he was spending an exorbitant amount on dining out and unnecessary streaming subscriptions. The next step was to create a strict budget, following the 50-30-20 rule. 50% for needs, 30% for wants, and 20% for savings and debt repayment. He realized he would need to renegotiate his debts, starting with the mortgage. The idea seemed daunting, but the alternative of losing everything was worse. He researched mortgage assistance programs offered by the U.S. government and financial institutions. Peter, inspired by the story of David, an Ohio teacher who used the debt snowball method to pay off his debts, adapted the strategy to his own. This method involves paying off the smallest debt first while making minimum payments on the others. Once the smallest debt is paid off, the amount previously paid on it is added to the payment of the next smallest debt, creating a snowball effect that accelerates repayment. He prioritized his credit cards with the highest interest rates as they were bleeding his budget the most. It was a slow and painful process, requiring sacrifices, like selling the new car and getting rid of some furniture items that once represented his status, but were now burdens. But with each debt paid off, no matter how small, the feeling of relief and control grew. Financial recovery doesn't happen overnight, but with a clear plan, discipline, and the willingness to make difficult changes, it's possible to climb out of the hole and regain control of your life. Another crucial strategy Peter considered was debt consolidation, a method that allows combining several debts into a single loan with a lower interest rate. While not a solution for all his problems, it could simplify the payment process and reduce the overall interest paid. Additionally, he sought professional financial counseling, something many Americans hesitate to do out of shame or lack of awareness. A counselor can offer an impartial perspective and develop a personalized plan, helping to identify areas for cutting expenses and prioritizing debts. The key to recovery is proactive action. It's not enough to just recognize the problem. You need the courage to face it head-on, seeking the tools and strategies that suit your situation, and persisting even when the path seems arduous. Discipline is the compass that guides you out of the debt labyrinth. The irony was not lost on Peter. He, a systems analyst who deals with complex data daily, had neglected the most important numbers in his own life. The absence of financial education was a black hole in his background, a common problem in the United States, where many learn about money through trial and error. Research from the Council for Economic Education shows that the majority of U.S. states do not require financial education in school curricula, leaving a critical gap in the population's knowledge. Peter started reading books, watching online lectures, and following personal finance experts. He learned about the importance of having an emergency fund, something he'd never had, and how impulsive consumption, fueled by the buy now, pay later culture, was a trap. He discovered the concept of compound interest, which, while beneficial for investments, was devastating when it came to credit card debt, turning small purchases into mountains of interest. The story of Emily, a young woman from New York who, at 25, already had $30,000 in student loan debt, resonated with Peter. Emily, despite having a good job, was overwhelmed. She sought financial counseling and learned to create a realistic repayment plan and prioritize her expenses, realizing that even education debt, though seen as good debt, still needed a solid repayment plan. Financial education isn't just about knowing how to save. It's about understanding how money works, how to protect it, and how to make it work for you. Peter realized that if he had had this knowledge earlier, he might not be in this situation. He learned that it's not enough to earn well. You need to know how to manage what you earn. The lesson was hard, but essential. Investing time in learning about personal finance is as crucial as investing in your career or your health. It is the foundation for building a solid financial life and avoiding the mistakes that lead so many to the brink of bankruptcy. Financial literacy empowers individuals to make informed decisions about spending, saving, and investing, protecting them from traps like predatory loans and get-rich-quick schemes. Peter also understood the importance of regularly reviewing his credit score, a vital factor for accessing loans and favorable interest rates in the future. He started monitoring his credit reports and taking steps to improve his score, understanding that a good credit history is a valuable asset. Furthermore, he delved into understanding how emotions affect financial decisions. Fear, anxiety, envy of what others have all can lead to impulsive spending and a cycle of debt. Peter learned to recognize these triggers and develop strategies to control them, transforming his relationship with money from a source of stress into a tool for empowerment and freedom. With his budget tight and the need to accelerate debt repayment, Peter began exploring a new avenue, generating extra income. The idea of having a side hustle, so common in the United States where the gig economy is growing exponentially, seemed like a viable solution. He researched online freelancing platforms in his field, like Upwork and Fiverr, offering his systems analysis services for small projects. The flexibility and the possibility of working from home appealed to him, allowing him to balance the new work with his existing responsibilities. In a short time, he secured a few clients, and the extra money, though modest at first, made a significant difference in his cash flow, enabling him to make larger debt payments, exceeding his initial expectations. Additionally, Peter, with the help of a financial consultant he had hired, began to understand the basic principles of investing. The U.S. economic landscape, with its diverse market options, offered opportunities, even for someone starting from scratch. He learned about exchange-traded funds and the importance of diversification, the strategy of not putting all your eggs in one basket, minimizing risks. He didn't have large sums to invest, but he started with small monthly contributions to a low-cost brokerage account, focusing on the long term and building a modest but growing portfolio, leveraging the power of compound interest. The story of Mark, a Texas father who, after being laid off, turned his woodworking hobby into a source of income, served as inspiration. Mark started by selling small items online and, over time, built a thriving business, showing Peter that creativity can be a powerful financial tool. Diversifying income and being able to make money work for you are pillars for building financial security. Peter realized that depending on a single source of income made him vulnerable, and that even with little capital, it was possible to start investing and build a more stable future. The journey was challenging, But with every extra dollar earned and every small investment made, he felt he was regaining control of his life, transforming anxiety into hope. He also explored other forms of passive income, such as dividend investments and peer-to-peer lending platforms, though with caution and after thorough research, prioritizing security over quick, risky returns. The idea wasn't to get rich overnight, but to create multiple revenue streams that could supplement his main salary and accelerate his recovery journey. His pursuit of financial market knowledge became a new hobby. He followed economic news, read market analyses, and participated in discussion forums. This immersion in the world of investing helped him better understand the risks and opportunities, making him more confident in his financial decisions and less prone to falling into traps. The lesson was clear: creativity and the willingness to explore new avenues are essential for those seeking financial independence and long-term security. Peter's life had changed dramatically. Sleepless nights gave way to more peaceful sleep. The debts still existed, but they were under control, and each month he saw the balance decrease. He had learned to live within his means, to plan his finances, and to value security over impulsive consumption. Building a sustainable financial future, he realized, wasn't a one-time event, but a continuous process of learning and adaptation. He set clear financial goals: build an emergency fund equivalent to 6 months of expenses, pay off the mortgage within a shorter time frame, and plan for his retirement with a realistic time horizon. He knew that the American market, with its fluctuations and unpredictability, required constant vigilance. Therefore, he began to review his budget regularly, adjusting it as his needs and goals changed, always remaining flexible and proactive. Peter also became an advocate for financial education, sharing his experiences with friends and family, encouraging them to learn from his mistakes and seek knowledge on the subject. The story of Maria, an immigrant who arrived in the U.S. with almost nothing and, through planning and discipline, built solid wealth, reinforced the idea that resilience and persistence are keys to financial success. Maria always prioritized saving, invested in her education, and sought growth opportunities, regardless of the difficulties, demonstrating that origin doesn't determine financial destiny. Peter now understood that true security didn't come from having a big house or a luxurious car, but from the freedom to make choices without the suffocating weight of debt. He continued to seek knowledge, diversify his investments, and build a robust financial cushion, ensuring he wouldn't revert to the habits that almost led him to ruin. The journey was arduous, but the reward was peace of mind and the certainty that this time he was building a solid and sustainable future, brick by brick. He also understood the importance of adequate insurance, not just home insurance, but also life and disability insurance, to protect himself and his family from unforeseen events, minimizing the risks of future financial crises. Peter learned to live below his means, a philosophy that contradicts American consumer culture, but which is fundamental for wealth accumulation. This doesn't mean deprivation, but rather conscious choices about where and how to spend, prioritizing what truly matters. He began to prioritize experiences over material possessions, investing in his health, personal development, and meaningful moments with his family, finding true happiness in a simpler and more purposeful lifestyle. The long-term mindset became the backbone of his financial decisions, moving him away from instant gratification and focusing on building a legacy, ensuring that the lessons learned would be passed on. Financial security, he discovered, isn't a destination, but a continuous journey of learning, discipline, and adaptation, a path that, once trodden, offers lasting freedom and tranquility.